Welcome to the Sober Nation FM podcast, where we're putting recovery on the map. I'm your host, Jonathan Sylvester. This show is brought to you by Sobriety Engine. Do you want to take your recovery to the next level? Do you want more support, community, and fellowship? Sobriety Engine is an incredible community of men and women supporting each other in their recovery. You can get a ton of great tips, resources, and guidance to help you succeed in recovery and in life. Visit sobrietyengine.com to join today. Sober Nation FM is also brought to you by Recover Health. If you're ready to get fit and start living a healthier lifestyle, all while supporting your sobriety, then you can learn more about having me as your own personal fitness and nutrition coach at rcvrhealth.com. And whether you're listening to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or watching on YouTube, please share this with your friends. Follow, subscribe, and leave a review. Nation, let's hop right into today's episode. Today, I'll be speaking with actor and writer Michael Strassner. Thanks for coming on the show, Michael.
Yes, thanks for having me, Jonathan. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. And I want to hear all about your acting and maybe some of the things that you've been working on more recently and possibly even upcoming projects. But first, would you mind telling us a little bit about how you actually found recovery? Like, what was going on in your life before you got sober?
Sure. I'll give you kind of a little bit of a rundown of like how it all started and began, and how I found recovery. Yeah, I started. I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay.
So I'm a diehard, Ravens and Orioles fan, and Hairspray and The Wire. That's kind of what I was raised on.
Yeah.
I had a pretty normal childhood, and then my parents got divorced when I was 8, and my dad remarried, and I had all these stepbrothers and stepsister. So there's now what originally was like my mom and my dad and my 2 sisters. It was now my mom and my sisters, and then my dad, my stepmom, and then Zach, Taylor, Lauren, Allison, Olivia, Carter, and myself. So there's 7 of us now. We had I was just like kind of an angry kid, and then dealing with a lot of things. And then like when I was 12 was when the first time I actually drank, and I had 5 shots of vodka of Smirnoff, and finally felt like that, like all the pain that I was going through as a kid, like I was like, oh, okay, like that's all just like numb now. Wow. And I remember enjoying it for an hour, having it a blast, and then wrapping myself around the toilet for the next hour and a half until my mom got there, and she's like, something's wrong with Michael, because he's usually Mr. Crazy, always making people laugh, and he's like passed out in the back seat. So she ends up taking me to the hospital, and I end up getting my stomach pumped.
Wow.
My first time drinking, and the doctor, I remember it being like, how old is he? And my mom's like, he's 12, but he'll be 13 next week. So almost a teenager. I felt really like I then took like a couple of years off of drinking, as you should, because I'm a 12-year-old and
right.
drinking every weekend.
You need a break, like 13 to 14 at least.
Exactly, that's what it was. And that actually was like when I first got introduced to marijuana and doing that. And then when I was 15 is like, that's like when I just start. I mean, I was working at a fun summer job, and there was a bunch of different older people that were working with me. So we go to the summer parties, and I ended up having a fake ID because I looked, I guess, like a 22-year-old at 15. And I was the guy always supplying, getting beer, and it was a lot of fun. It was like,
for sure,
like I enjoy, like I always like to say, like, alcohol was like, it saved my life for a long time, because like I didn't have to feel the stuff that I was feeling inside so much. Depression is a lot of my story, a lot of the just like, so when I was like, and I would start having these things where like something would happen, and I would get I would get drunk and then get really depressed, and I started to notice that like in college and such, like, like I had like, and I only share this stuff because I like to let people know that like the depression that I had also, I think, coincides with the drinking a lot. I had 5 suicide attempts by the time I was 28, and what it ended up being. And when I look back on those things, one, they were super dramatic and a cry for help, but at the same time, like me not wanting to actually get the help that I needed.
Okay.
Because I always I brushed it off, I was just drunk. I was just, I was just taking pills as a joke. I was just,
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Like each of those attempts, were you under the influence? Like, had you been drinking?
Oh yeah, every single Each time was a drunken cry, and I remember I kind of I in college was the first one, I think, freshman year, where I actually did tell my parents, and they I started talking to a counselor, and the alcohol thing was not really super addressed. I remember that the counselor just being well, alcohol is a depressant, so just so remember that. But at the same time, you're college, so enjoy yourself. It's kind of the response I got. And it just and then I joined a fraternity, and that was even more alcohol, and I knew that I just if I could be the funny guy, my pain can go away too. If I can make people laugh, then they won't know that I'm really actually fucked up and dealing with shit.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way in which I went. It continued on to after college. I then decided, I was what, I'm going to go and move away from Baltimore, my home, all my friends.
Sure.
I'm going to go out to California and take this career seriously, the comedy and acting. This is what I want to do with my life.
Okay. And
I got into a really prestigious comedy school and was moving up the ladder there. It was an improv and sketch school. As that was happening, I would say that's when because I was on my own, and I was getting moderate success. I was, I booked a commercial here, or I, booked a little co-star on a TV show, and then another TV show, and was getting success and moving up that school. And I was oh, things are actually going really well, but my alcoholism was just soaring.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, man, so when you're in college and, you're having all these experiences, you're going to see a counselor, obviously, that the alcohol is there and it's part of the equation, but are you seeing it at all as a bigger part of the problem, or is it? And the reason I ask is because, I'm thinking back on my experience and our stories. This is why I love doing these interviews. Our stories are pretty alike. Parents divorced today. For me personally, I was the fat kid growing up, no self-confidence whatsoever. All these things.
Me.
Yeah. Trying to well, I didn't want to say it, man, but I was I was just picking up on those vibes, because I could feel and relate to all that. But I know, when I was kind of in the same age range that you were describing, you were, in college, you were going through all these things. I would be talking to my mom and bawling, crying, and life sucks and blah, blah, blah. And she'd say, what's wrong? And I knew that drugs and alcohol were part of the problem, but I literally said, I don't know, because I really hadn't identified it yet. So I guess that's my question. When did you actually identify this as part of the problem? Was it after you kind of got into the acting stuff a little bit?
Well, that's kind of when I honestly had to, because and I don't want to because I even when I was 19, I got in a hit and run. I took my mom's car to Taco Bell and ended up, hitting a fire hydrant and then 2 parked cars and getting on foot and calling my mom and being Mom, can you come get me? And she's yeah, of course. And then she called me back. She's Michael, you have the car. And I was oh, I forgot. That's, parked somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was right. But I remember feeling complete and utter shame being in jail that night, waking up the next morning and like going to the courthouse and like having my mom pick me up and just like bawling in her eyes. But I was like, I still was like, I don't want to give this up. And what this is like, and now like looking back on like that, like what, like give what up? Like you, like your life is in shambles right now, but you still like are trying to push it forward with this. And I think I was just like, I think the people that I surrounded myself with, and also just like, you know, I was just like, no, like this is normal. Like, you know, I have other friends who've gotten this stuff. Like I have other, you know, and it's not normal. Like, you know, you could kill someone. And, but when it really happened, the moment of clarity for me was, and I think that's kind of like the thing that I hope whoever's struggling out there, like someday finds, is that like moment of, I like to call it like grace, where you're just like, I can't do this anymore. Like it's gotten to that. And I hope it doesn't go too far as they're not around anymore, because I've seen that happen too.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and like, you know, when it looks like everything is going so well, it's sometimes not, you know, especially in my case, like, you know, I was climbing up that ladder because I'll just tell you what, like when recovery hit for me.
Sure.
I was climbing up that ladder at that really prestigious school that I cared so much about. It was like my dream.
Yeah.
You know, and I made it to the minor league level of that school.
Okay.
Where like you start getting seen by more casting direct and all this stuff. And the summer before I got sober, I got flown out, or I showcased for Saturday Night Live, and they flew me out to test. And I was like, holy shit, like you know, this is my fucking dream. Like, this is what I wanted. Like, this is, everything's coming true.
Yeah.
I go back to Los Angeles. They fly me out again for another test. So I'm in like the last round, and I'm like, holy fucking shit. Like, this could be it. And as you know, because I mean, I didn't get it. And that is when I just fucking sailed. Like, I just hit the downward spiral. Those next, I think it was like the next 5 months, I got asked to do one more, because it like the way the school works, you get like asked to come back for another, like to make it to the last level of like the actual company.
Okay.
I got asked to do one final one, and in those first 3 months of that time, my alcoholism was through the roof. I mean, it was already kind of there, like, but like it just hit it. Like, I'd say I get up at 11 o'clock, I look myself in the mirror, hungover as hell, and I'd say, I'm not going to drink today. And by 2 o'clock, I'd had my Jim Beam on the rocks in my place.
Yeah.
Trying to write comedy when there was no humor in my own life. And I ended up going back for Christmas, kind of getting in like a fight with my mom and my sister. Like, I was such a fucking asshole the last Christmas I drank, like, you know, like throwing just anger at everyone and like pointing and I was just like, no, I'm on vacation, I'm drinking. It's like, you're not, like, you're celebrating the holidays with your family, you're not on fucking like drunk time. And I went back to Los Angeles. We had like a pitch before the big opening that we had, and I just did not do well at that pitch. It was not good. It sent me into just the last. It was it. I ended up not answering my phone call for this girl that I was seeing. My buddy was texting me. He's like, "Hey, what's going on today?" And I was just like, "I'm gonna get fucked up, and I'm not gonna talk to anybody." So I start drinking at 10 a.m. I drive to the ArcLight Theater. I go see 3 Billboards, which is probably the worst movie you can see if you're super depressed and an alcoholic, just for, you know, and I have a Manhattan there at 11 a.m., drink that. Then I drink in the theater, go home, go to work, because I was serving at that time. And I show up there drunk, try to wait on tables, and I'm just continue to drink at work. And I ended up going home, because I get sent home because I leave my tables for like an hour unaware. I was like on the phone with somebody outside who I don't know. And I get sent home from work, and I take that last Jim Beam on the rocks. I go down to my dryer and washer room, and I put a belt around my neck, and I try to hang myself. And I think about my mom and my sisters as it was happening, and the belt broke.
Wow.
And I call my best friend the next day, who's been incredible throughout, this whole time. And I called the girl that I was seeing, and I just said, I need help. For the first time, I told him exactly what happened. I told him, where I'm at, and it gets a little, like, that whole week gets a little crazy. They end up telling the director. I tell the director what's going on with my thing. He's telling me that I have to take a leave of absence from the company. I'm like fucking like heartbroken. And they take me to a shrink at that day, and they're like, you need to because we need to figure out what we need to do for you.
Right.
And the shrink, within 20 minutes of having a conversation with me, he brings them back in, and he's like, so Michael can't drink anymore, and we suggest he goes somewhere to get help. And so I start going, or so I get someone to call, like, I start going to get help. And I was so lost at that moment, because I was like, I feel like the thing that I love to do so much has been taken away by my own actions and my own doing. My depression has become so bad that, like, I don't want to be here anymore, and I don't care about how anybody else feels. And so I start to, work the steps, find somebody to kind of help me go through those. And I find out that they do not, like 3 months into that, I get, 90 days. I'm feeling like I'm feeling the pink cloud, like,
right.
And that during that time, they told me, rightfully so, they were like, Michael, you're not allowed to come back here at all. You've burned that bridge, and it's just not going to happen. And instead of turning and drinking at that point, I was like, and I also heard from somebody, just as I was getting sober, they always said, if you put anything above your sobriety, you're going to end up losing it.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I thought, I'm not going back to that school. I know, because I'm putting it above, because I'm trying so hard to get back there.
Sure.
And not focus on just staying sober.
Yeah.
And
wow.
it was a rude awakening. But I didn't want to drink over that, because I felt like, like, I want to keep going, and I have continued. Life has brought me a lot of joys and wonderful experiences in my sobriety, but it also, like, I stayed sober, and I kept kind of creating stuff and, focusing on my sobriety, because other people around me are helping me get there. I finally had that support that I've always wanted and felt a part of something.
Yeah.
And I get a year sober on January 19th, 2019. 2 days later, I get a phone call from my dad telling me that my stepbrother had overdosed and died.
Wow.
And I didn't know what to do. I was just like, I called, my buddy right away, and I was like, what do I do? And he's like, you show up for your family. You show up and you stay sober. And so I got on the first flight back to Baltimore. That experience with my family is something that I never, like, I had my ear chip, and I put that in the casket with Zach. And because he had some time in recovery as well, um, and he just yeah. So I don't know where I'm like
Sure.
kind of but I'm saying that like people have showed me how to walk through these things and stay sober.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm so forever grateful for. Like
Yeah.
recovery has taught me that, that good and bad is going to happen in your life, but you like, because you now have people around you to be there for you. And I think I always did too. Like, don't get me wrong. Like the people that I think I never wanted to use them for help because I saw help as like, they were always there, but it was me that was the one who didn't want to ask for it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I get that completely. And man, what a powerful story. And I know that, there's many of our listeners that are just going, and I appreciate your honesty, but a lot of our listeners that are going to appreciate your honesty, especially just about the depression and the mental health and the suicide attempts, because I think one of the most important things we learn in this deal is that we're not alone in any of this, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that drives us deeper into these dark spots in our lives, is thinking like no one else understands this, no one else is thinking the way that I'm thinking. I'm running solo in this deal. I know, you and I were chatting before we hopped on here. I had your buddy Billy Flynn on the show recently, and you were telling me that you guys are pretty close, and I would call it like brothers in recovery, and which I think is so awesome. I know I've seen that in my own personal recovery and life, that having a close knit group of people that I can really stay plugged in with has been just like imperative. I don't think it's any mistake that I've been around for a few years now, and these guys have too. How important do you think it is to like have some of those people? Hopefully times are a little different right now, which we'll talk about, but hopefully we have the people that we kind of see at meetings that are like acquaintances and stuff like that. But how important do you think it is to have like a kind of like an inner circle, if you will, of people that you're talking to frequently and just getting feedback from and letting them know what's going on?
I mean, I think it's essential. Like the amount here. Sorry, someone just popping in here.
Yeah, you're good.
No, I think it's essential because the people that, when like good and bad have come from, like the reason why I'm still sober is because of other people and them continually picking up the phone when I'm in need, and also for them getting out of my, like, if I call like somebody who's new to sobriety, I can get out of my own shit and listen to them, and I'm like, oh, like I remember what that fucking was like, and you're fucking a fucking rock star for doing what you're doing right now, especially during this time.
Sure.
It's inspiring as hell. And Billy is somebody who I love dearly, and yeah, we had a fucking blast on the outside, and a lot of good times, but like the stuff that I have now with him is 1,000 times more beneficial to me, and also to just our relationship. We talk about real shit.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah.
Like the nice thing about like being sober is like, okay, like you feel everything. The bad thing about being sober is you feel everything. And like, like you have to get those out. You have to get those feelings out. And luckily you have people that are willing to listen. and also be like, yeah, but like also call you out on your shit sometimes and be like,
Man.
yeah, but like, you know, what have you done today? Have you you know, gotten your brain right? Have you meditated? It sounds like you probably haven't meditated yet. You know, have you gotten your workout in? You know, have you done everything that, like, have you done your gratitude list? You know, things that just make me feel better, and then that just kind of get that start off. You know, like that's like, you know, it's, and that's the thing is like I think what's so beautiful about being sober is that you have so many people in your life that's, and I think you've always had it too. Don't get me wrong. Like I always like to say, like my buddies from back home,
Sure.
I love dearly and have respected the hell out of me for doing my own thing
Right.
in my career and also in my sobriety. You know, like they're supportive as hell, and they've always, and like, you know, like, I mean, I think there was like the last time I really had a, like, I don't even know what I wanted to, I mean, it's more or less like it was a wedding. You know, I was always the funny guy. The next morning I woke up, I was still drunk or whatever. And, you know, like I'm the guy who wants to make everybody laugh. So I'd have one sock on my foot and the other sock on my private part. And I was asking all my buddies around who are some of their fiancés or their fiancé. And like, I was like, have you guys seen my other sock? I'm so freaking sorry. I can't freaking find this thing to save my life. And they're like, Michael, like there's definitely something wrong with Michael. But we don't know what exactly it is.
Yeah.
But you know, like what I think, the beauty, and following that story with the beauty of sobriety is like, I don't have to be that freaking crazy guy anymore. I'm still, don't get me wrong, I'm still fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But I get all that shit out in a positive way.
Yeah. I really like what you said earlier, just as you were describing, you know, as you were getting into really pursuing the acting and the comedy stuff, and you were sitting there trying to, you know, write jokes while you were drinking, that there just wasn't any comedy there. It's like, I remember, like, you're talking about these relationships that change, right? Because we change. And so one of those relationships in my life was with my dad. Like, we did not have a great relationship. It was on both sides, but it was mainly me for sure. And as I started to heal, or whatever you want to call it, just get better and get sober, you know, that relationship improved immensely. And one of the things that he always reminds me of is, you know, he was telling some probably stupid dad joke basically, and I didn't think it was funny. And, you know, I guess I told him that I just didn't think anything was fun, that there was nothing to laugh about in life. And I'm kind of glad he reminds me about that, because, man, like, humor is like a huge part of my life. And I'd even say like a part of my recovery for sure. Like, you know, so yeah, I think that's awesome though, that you've had so many people around to support you. I do want to ask, because I think this is important to ask our guests, and maybe you've already pinpointed a couple things. What do you think the biggest thing that you struggled with early on in sobriety was? Like, just as you were kind of getting the ball rolling and everything, what was really the biggest struggle for you? I know you talked about the depression part of things, and not to diminish that or blow that off, but is there anything else a little more specific you can kind of pinpoint there?
My biggest fear when I first got sober was, how am I still going to be funny? How am I going to enjoy things? Will my life be just a sad thing without alcohol? You know, like I got sober on, it was Pro Bowl weekend, but the next weekend was Super Bowl. And I was like, and my whole mind was like, how the fuck am I going to watch Super Bowl? Like, how am I going to watch Super Bowl without having it, like, it's Super Bowl?
Right. Yeah.
Like, how do you not, like, I mean, thank God the Ravens won it, because I don't even know how I would have reacted to that. But, you know, like, and it was like all these things that, like, I was like, and it happened slowly, but it was like, you know, Memorial Day weekend, I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to get through this? And I'm like, oh, okay, well, you get through it by calling somebody when you're not feeling that great, you know? And now I've watched 2 Ravens seasons sober. And what's nice about it is that after we lose, I don't cry and punch a hole in my wall, because I'm so blacked out and think that I have something to do with how the Ravens are performing.
Right.
And, you know, like I put that on myself as well,
Yeah.
you know, and like, the funny aspect of it and the comedy aspect of it, you know, I, a buddy, like my writing partner and buddy, Jono, has like been there by my side throughout all of this recovery. And like, he is one of the main reasons, like, I thought I was going to like, you know, lose him because of my actions dating back to the school. And he has been nothing but just a pillar of support for me, as well as some of my other friends who aren't sober, but are just there for me. And especially in the comedy world that I'm in, like, I have, you know, like, you know, a core group of friends that have been super supportive of me, you know, still pushing my brand of comedy and what I find funny, and just being there as a human being as well for fucking when shit gets rough,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. But like, you know, like I feel like my comedy is even my comedy and also my performing in whatever I have done, I'm actually more proud of in sobriety than I was when I was drinking.
Hmm.
You know, like, um, I, you know, I did have that, like, a year and a half into my sobriety, I did get to audition for SNL again. Didn't get it again. They really know how to knock you down a bunch. But, you know, I didn't have to drink over that. And I
Yeah.
got another opportunity while being sober.
Yeah,
Know?
well, so I wanted to talk about that. That's a good segue here. So because I'm going to say you've earned roles. Okay, so you've earned some roles on some really well-known shows like Parks and Rec, Modern Family, Blackish. I'm sure I'm leaving a few out of here probably.
I think you got the majority of them.
Yeah, yeah. So and man, that's awesome. So how did you get back into this? You know, like one of the things that I always find is really an interesting conversation for me because you know, I think there were things that I thought I was passionate about before I got sober that it turned out like maybe I wasn't so much into. But then I talked to people like you that were into certain things and they're able to reconnect with that even more so in their sobriety. I think you just talked about that, like the things that you're doing now sober, like you're way more proud of. You probably, you know, think you're performing better, which I would, you know, estimate that you are. How did you get back into that and how did your acting change, do you think?
um, that's a great. I mean, great question. I think like I really, I mean, because like that first 90 days, because I didn't have my comedy crew that because I was performing every single week up until that time.
Okay.
So it's just like it went flat, like you're gone.
Stop. Okay. Yeah.
Um, and that's also during like, you know, pilot season out in LA is like right around that time too in February. So like, and I didn't have anybody knocking, like no auditions, no nothing. I don't think I had a commercial. Like I was not doing anything, but just like I wanted to do other things, but like I really had time to focus on my sobriety and be like, you know what, like let's start doing this, and staying on track on this, and seeing what life brings if I put my sobriety first.
Hmm.
And you know, I didn't get asked back to do that, but then I like when I finally got like asked to like not come back to the school, um, I was like, okay, well, there's three things I want to do by the end of this year. That happened in May. I was like, I want to stay. Well, one, I want to stay sober and I want to keep going. I want to do a one man show and I want to do a short film. And I want to go to another comedy school and make their team. So four things, sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
And all of those things happened. And it was because I was showing up for other people too.
Hmm.
You know, I wanted to do a one man show about sobriety and like what like, you know, like basically like kind of like, you know, what happened and like where I'm at now, you know, and like how low and sobriety and depression almost, like that's kind of what the show was about.
Yeah.
And you know, like that kind of, and then the short film was kind of about like my experience was just kind of, I put it in a different setting, but just like kind of a guy losing it all, um, from people that he thought cared about him, you know. Um, and I started to do these things, and then I also was like, I got back, me and Jono got back to working together, and I was like, let's just put out a sketch every single week, no matter what we have, and we're just gonna call it Jono and Michael Try. And that, you know, what started as just him and I, just because we like, that's kind of what sobriety told me too. Is like, when I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. When I say I'm gonna call you today, I call that person. You know, that's just something that was ingrained in me, and I still want to make sure I'm doing. And that's kind of what we did with that. So like, I did all those things, and then I also wanted. So then we got that going, and as I'm watching myself on film more, doing the John Michael Try, more things have just come from that. And like, you know, like, the show ended up going onto Amazon Prime for like starting in May. So we had like 20 episodes that we shot, and like then like during the pandemic, it's since moved to like Funny or Die, and like now is re-airing there like every single week, and we're trying to push for like a second season right now. But it's all because of like mending that relationship with Jono, and looking at my side of the street on it, and being like, I fucked up hard, and I'm sorry, and like, what can I, and then also, what can I do to make it better, and it won't happen again.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's, and like, you know, that's what's like, and that's kind of the way sobriety has kind of taught me, like, oh, you can really do whatever you put your mind to,
Mm-hmm.
which I was told that at a young age, but I was like, oh yeah, but like, you know, especially in the arts, like people say they're going to do stuff and they don't actually do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like I've surrounded myself with people that are doers, you know, in the sense of like, we shoot sketches, we put them up, you know, I'm in another sketch group with Genuine Jerks, and like, we just put up a fucking video every week because it's just fun. And it's like, you know what, like, we'll see what comes of it. You know, we shot a movie during this pandemic that's now on Amazon Prime called Misses, with another buddy of mine, called Good Luck with Everything. And like, you know, it's about a guy who thinks he's not enough, plain and simple. And nothing to do with sobriety, but just like a, you know, just a movie that we wanted to, that Chris, a buddy of mine, Chris, wanted to direct, shoot, write, edit. And I was like, okay, you're saying, and I told him kind of the same thing. Like, you're telling me you're going to do it. Okay, then let's do it.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
let's stick to what we're going to do. And, you know, it just came out, and like, it's been great. And like, but like, this is the thing of like what I'm learning in sobriety is like, this is it. Like, it's going to be other thises, you know, other successes, and, you know, but this right now, what we're doing, that's it. Like, acceptance in that has been amazingly gratifying, you know, and being of service and being, you know, there for other people. My life has been immensely, the depression, sure, I get little spouts, not to where the fuck I was going the last couple of years,
Right.
when
Yeah.
it hit.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's these little things that you just kind of do, and it just, and then the days become months, and the months become years, but sometimes you still just need to worry about this fucking second that you're in, you know, and what can you do?
Yeah.
I think that answers the question, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, man, I think you answered a lot of questions there. And yeah, that's really cool, man. You said two things that I really love. Number one, the doing what I say I'm gonna do. I have to imagine, you know, out in LA, and just, you know, in the entertainment world, you know, because I've met a lot of these people, and I used to be one of these people, so I'm not even talking shit. Like, you know, there's probably a lot of, oh yeah, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that, and it's gonna be awesome, and everyone's gonna and then they don't do anything. So I'm sure there's a lot of that out there. But I think, yeah, that's something, those are the people, like what you just described you're doing, like those are the people that I'm really trying to surround myself with. It's like, oh, I'm going to call you, and they call. Yeah, I can help you out with this. And my first, because I'm in a 12-step program too, and so my first sponsor, he really, like, I'm not going to say beat into me, but really taught me to stop saying try. Like, I'm going to try to do things. Like, he would always, it would annoy the shit out of me, but I'd say, he'd say, so are you going to come to this meeting? Or are you going to come do this service work thing or whatever? And I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to try to be there, which was basically me trying to walk my way out of it and say, no, I'm not going to do it. And he would put like a pen or a pencil on the table in front of me. He'd be like, try to pick that pen up. And I go to pick it up and he'd like slam it down and be like, no, try to pick it up. So I love that that's really what you're working towards. The other thing that I really like that you just said, I was just having a conversation about this last night. I don't even think it needs to be explained. You could call it karma or whatever. And it's not like I expect this, but what I hear you saying is that the more you focus on other people, the better your life gets. Is that about right?
Yeah. I mean, that's just kind of that's what has that's taught me the most, especially during this time that we're in right now,
Mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
if you can pick up the phone for other people, if you can check in with people, I mean, the fact that, like, 12-step programs have adapted so well
Sure.
to the circumstances that we're in right now. I mean, like, that's been a blessing. I mean, like, that has been, I mean, again, it's not my life is not I anymore. It's we, like,
Mm-hmm.
that's just what I just like to embrace it, because it's like, I've had that mindset of, like, it's all about me, and it's all, you know, and it makes me feel worse now being sober. Like, I don't like to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I like being there for others,
Yeah.
and I like, just, I mean, and it's like, it doesn't cost, and I know this sounds like, I feel like I'm, Bill Murray and Scrooge. Like, it doesn't cost anything,
Yeah.
like, just be, and again, especially with whatever, I mean, I'm not getting anything into, but what's going on in the world, it's just like, just let's just be more supportive,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
and also see that this shit is not like, it's fucking real, and people are dying from it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So if support groups, and and if we stop making a stigmatism on addiction and depression and these things as being weak, is that is what really makes, I mean, that's what I'm striving most to show, and that's why I share my own experience in both those things,
Yeah.
to try to help, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. So, and I want to ask you about that because, and I always like to ask guests on the show that are in the entertainment world and to kind of get their take on this. We hear about there's a laundry list, and every day it seems like it grows of well-known celebrities that are starting to talk about their sobriety and being in recovery, and just what that looks like to certain degrees. Do you think that is helping to change that stigma that you were just talking about? Like, is it changing the discussion about addiction at all, do you think?
um I mean, I know the reasons, why, you know you are not supposed to talk about your sobriety, and your, because in the event that, like, because the success rate is not great,
Yeah.
if we're being completely honest with each other, like,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
i I fortunately have never relapsed, but I do think that when I said I'm not going to do something, like drink at 11 a.m., and then I end up drinking at 1, I couldn't do it on my own. And all those times
Mm.
was theoretically a relapse in my own, I mean, like, of not being able to do it,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
But like, and this is where I just come into, like, I try my best not to, I guess, name, the 12-step program that I'm in.
Right.
Um, but I'm sober, and I'm fucking proud to be sober. And I know that when I was coming into these rooms, I didn't know really what it was or what that life looks like, like I think sharing about this stuff does, I think it only helps people, because maybe they see somebody that they look up to that has some time, and like, and I know that, like, the whole point is to share your experience and your strength and, your hope. So, and again, I know how touchy of a, because, we sometimes have it in the, where that's something we talk about,
Right.
and it's like, why we shouldn't do it, why we should adjust. And it's like, we're all just trying to stay sober one day at a time. And why not help people even more?
Yeah. Yeah. That's really well said, man. And I'm with you. And I kind of go back and forth. I mean, I think that, 12-step programs, when they talk about anonymity, like, it was a little different back in the day, right? I mean, you would be basically like fucking banished.
You get fired,
Yeah, you fired, lose your place in society. Everyone around you leaves. So yeah, pretty different. And I know that certain 12-step programs, they talk about in so many words, and there's different sayings that go along with this, but like extending that hand when someone is in need, right? So I think my main thought, and this probably makes sense since I'm doing a show like this, so it's not like I'm, hiding that I'm in recovery or anything, but I think my main thought is, if you and I were not having this conversation, and I get the not naming the program, but if you and I were not having this conversation, there were not other people talking about it, what would you and I have done? Like, where would we have gone? We might not have known that there was an alternative,
Yeah, I mean, that's the, because I remember, like, because I think I just always, like, never, like, I remember where I grew up, like, it was like kind of like, I don't know how to say it, like, it's like you had to go to these things if you were,
okay. Yeah.
and and where my life is now is like, I want to go, and it's because maybe, I mean, because I found some really great people there, and like, I heard some, I don't want to mention anybody's name, but like,
Sure.
I've heard songs that have, like, talked about sobriety and them making their, sobriety so open. It's given me, I mean, it's given, like, maybe, like, okay, like, maybe, like, it's okay to talk about this stuff, because, like, as an actor and, like, writer and like whatever, all artists, people like working with sober people, like, they don't want the drunk showing up anymore. Like, I mean, like, that's not good.
That makes sense, actually. Yeah, that
so
makes
like
sense.
like
Yeah.
and like, it's and usually, like, and I feel like a lot of, I mean, and I also, like, don't want to, like, toe the line of, like, well, are actors and writers and all these people just doing it because they are who they are and they need to be seen in that, light.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know, man. Like, it's just, it's, I think it's something that, like, people still, like, I had a conversation with my neighbor, my dad's neighbor, on a porch this summer, and I was talking to him, and he was like, I just never thought of addiction as a disease. And I was like, man, all right, like, it's in the medical addiction. I mean, like, it's seen as one from the medical world, and, like, I wish you could get into my head and you could, like, see my thoughts sometimes, where these things pop up. If I see, people drinking on the beach, I'm like, oh yeah, that looks like a good one. I mean, that's the thought. That's the ism, like.
Yeah.
So having a conversation with him and talking to him about it, like, it actually enlightened him a little bit about what what people like me go through. And I think because they only know sometimes, like, the guys that don't get, who are not as fortunate to get sober,
Sure.
or
Yeah.
keep trying. I mean, like, it's just such a debatable, like, and I think at the end of the day, it's just like, isn't our ultimate goal is just help others and help other people, get what we have, because we can't keep it. It's gotta keep going.
Yeah.
You know.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I agree, man. 100%. I do want to ask, we can't get you off of here. I think we plugged your stuff a little bit, but we got to get the plugs in, man. So, tell us what you've been working on recently. I know you said you shot a movie during all this, but maybe what's coming up next as well.
Yeah, so we have a movie that just got released like last, I think, like 2 weeks ago or something. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called Good Luck with Everything, and that's going well. I'm shooting a movie right now with the other girl that was in that movie with me. She's directing it, and that's going to be called Spy Movie, and that's coming out probably sometime next year. And that's going really well. And I'm actually trying to get behind the camera myself and do something like that down the road as well. So, and if you want to see me and Billy act together, there's a John and Michael Try a soap opera that's on Funny or Die right now it's pretty fun.
I'll have to check that out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's, there is a foundation that's actually named after my brother that's in Maryland, called the ZTP Foundation. My siblings started up and have got it going, and actually their foundation helps with Mark. They work with Mark Maryland Addiction and Recovery Center to actually help get scholarships for kind of people that were kind of in Zach's situation.
Okay. That's awesome.
So that's a cool thing that my siblings are doing back in Baltimore that I'm really proud that they're doing.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
So that's just a little plug for, the ZTP Foundation.
Yeah. Awesome. So before we wrap up here, Michael, I want to ask, I think you've shared a lot of, I'm just going to say words of wisdom, man. I think you've shared a lot of really great stuff, which I appreciate. But I do want to ask if there's maybe one piece of advice in particular that you'd like to share with the Sober Nation, maybe someone that's new, that's just been struggling for a while, is just trying to kind of navigate this sobriety deal.
Oh man. To pick up that 5,000 million pound phone, and just make the call. And to just, my life, honestly, like, it's just beautiful. I cannot express how much recovery has given me. And I hope everybody else who's struggling has that same type of thing that I've gotten in this small amount of time. And to just know that, like, I'm drastically more of a happy human being sober than I ever was when I was drinking.
Yeah, man, got to pick up that phone. It can get heavy sometimes. That's for sure. Yeah. That's for sure. So you can connect with Michael on Instagram at Strassola. That's STRASSHOLA. Thanks again for coming on the show, Michael.
Thank you for having me. And yes, reach out, whichever way you can, I'm here for you.
Be sure to check out the show notes for all the info from today's episode. Sober Nation FM is brought to you by Sobriety Engine. Sobriety Engine is a free online community of men and women supporting each other in their recovery. Visit sobrietyengine.com to join today. This show is also brought to you by Recover Health. If you're ready to get fit and start living a healthier lifestyle while supporting your sobriety, you can learn more about having me as your own personal fitness and nutrition coach at rcvrhealth.com. And again, whether you're listening to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or watching on YouTube, please share this with your friends, follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. Nation, Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.